World governments reached a climate change deal to limit the amount of warming to less than 2 degrees Celsius. So this is a big deal, for sure. A lot of different outlets are portraying this as the last-ditch effort for the world to get its shit together to fight against absolute catastrophe. I mean, I'm semi-convinced we're already at the point of absolute catastrophe, and everything we do now is just minor tweaks around the edges to prevent the worst of the worst of the worst of catastrophes. But nonetheless, let me give you the details, and then you guys can make up your own mind here. Science Alert reports, quote, "First off, the agreement recognized two fundamental facts. First, that climate change represents an urgent and potentially irreversible threat to human societies and the planet, and thus requires the widest possible cooperation by all countries. And second, that deep reductions in global emissions will be required in order to achieve the ultimate objective of the convention, and emphasizing the need for urgency in addressing climate change." So again, that's absolutely necessary and fantastic that the world governments are saying, okay, we're on board with it. We're recognizing it. We know we got to do something about it. So let's move forward. So what are the specifics of the deal? Well, the richest nations agreed to raise enough funds so that by the year 2020, $100 billion a year will be made available to developing nations to help them get off of dirty energy. So the way it works right now, the more advanced economies are obviously more reliant on fossil fuels, and we're, of course, hence bigger polluters. So those nations, a lot of people say, for them to develop, they need dirty energy, so they're going to be more reliant on that. And this is the first world nations, the rich nations saying, well, how about we give them $100 billion a year for a while to make it so that, you know, it gets them off of dirty energy, and we can all invest in whatever, wind, solar, geothermal, and other green technology in order to move forward. Now, so that's a positive thing, and there are legitimate questions and concerns about that. How are you going to give them the money? How's it going to be implemented? Do you know the level, the extent of corruption in those governments? Now, I know it's hard for people in the U.S. to talk about, ooh, other governments are so corrupt. We're immensely corrupt. That's obvious. We rail about that every day. But nonetheless, it's still a valid question about other governments. It's not like, they all have rainbows and puppies and there's no corruption there. Of course there is. There's corruption in all governments. So there are some legitimate question marks about that, but in principle, I think it's a good idea. It's just a matter of execution and how you carry it out. Now, the richest nations, they say, other than that, the process by which you go about this is on each individual country. Quote, "But the legal requirements that they publicly monitor, verify, and report what they are doing, as well as publicly put forth updated plans, are designed to create a name and shame system of global peer pressure in hopes that countries will not want to be seen as international laggards." So this is where a lot of experts are saying, that's a red flag. Because the punishments or the incentive system that's set up is just, if you don't do it, we're going to go, we're going to shame you. That's pretty weak in my opinion. That's pretty weak. I'm telling you, I read all these articles wanting to get super excited and wanting to say, all right, yes, we finally got our shit together. We're going to really combat climate change now. But what I got is, okay, some money for the developing nations to make sure that they get on green technology. Promises to not increase warming more than 2 degrees Celsius over time. And then this, which is, it's on each individual nation to determine how they do that. And if they don't do that, we go, oh, shame on you. Shame on you. The thing that really sticks out in my mind as I read this is, we're kind of willy-nilly with the UN and with international law as it is today. And actually, to be fair, the US is the worst with that. I mean, we just brazenly and wantonly violate international law whenever the fuck we want, because we say, in essence, we're above the law because, we got the biggest military in the world and say something. whether it's doing torture or whether it's not paying reparations to governments who we fucked over in the past and we technically owe them reparations. The list goes on and on. But in this case, I don't think it's just the U.S. that's probably not going to meet the goals, and then there's going to be nothing but shame on you. They're not going to care about that. But I think it's other nations too. China, if they so choose to go in the direction of renewable energy, they can do it, and they can do it faster than the U.S. because they're a communist dictatorship where they can just say, boom, done, over, no more dirty energy, and that's it. Nobody else in the country has a say. So it's a bad way for them to go about doing it because the structure of their government is fucked up and worse. But point is, they could do it if they so choose, and do I think they're going to do it? No, I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think the U.S. is going to do it. I don't think a lot of the other modern nations are going to do it. And in all seriousness, the developing nations, even if you give them $100 billion, I'm not sure it's going to be spent in the right way. And, it is true that those underdeveloped economies, at this point, it does make more sense for them from a financial perspective to get more involved with dirty energy. That's just the reality of the situation. I wish that wasn't true, but it is true. So my sense of this is that it's super vague and super weak, even though everybody's saying, well, at least we got something. And that part is true as well. At least we did get something, but let's keep it in perspective here. This is basically the Obamacare of climate change deals. And what I mean by that is with Obamacare, the real answer to fix the U.S. healthcare system was Medicare for All, which is a single-payer system. And then if you weren't going to do that, at the very least, you should have done what's called a public option, which is a system you can buy into, a government system you can buy into if you so choose. But we didn't get any of that. We got the weakest reform, which is keep the private insurance companies intact, which are the heart of the problem, and the for-profit model intact, which is the heart of the problem, and then, tweak around the edges and help people that way. So again, Obamacare in the end was better than doing no reform, but it was the worst of all possible kinds of reforms. This strikes me as the same thing for climate change. It's better than not getting any deal between all the different nations around the world. But as far as the specifics of any deal go, it's not great because they just have vague promises of, we promise it won't get too bad. And hey, here's some money for the developing nations. But other than that, it's like, now nobody fuck up because if you do, we're going to shame you. Because, shame usually works so well on the world stage.